Welcome back. Well, joining us now is Judith Troutman. She is the secretary at the Golden Rain Foundation, and they just met on Tuesday. But today we really want to focus on the Disaster Preparedness Task Force. Thanks for joining us today, Judith.
My pleasure.
Now, this task force has kind of grown over the years. I remember back in the old days, it was actually called the Earthquake Disaster Task Force. And then when the flood, well, I don't think we can say flood. When we had that heavy rain that one year, I believe they started to think, wow, there's more than earthquakes that we really need to think about here.
Yes, that's true. I wasn't here then. I've only been here 10 years, but a lot of my friends were here then. And so I picked up some little tidbits from them that I wanted to share with you today.
Now, I like one of them you showed the other day at the GRF meeting too. That was a very interesting cartoon that you showed us.
Yes, that was, it looked like a three-headed egg, but it was actually an ostrich with their head in the sand.
Right. And that's what happens sometimes, right?
Yes, unfortunately, we get complacent, I think, and especially now we're concentrating on COVID. But if we were to have an earthquake doesn't, or natural disaster doesn't discriminate. Like, they're not going to wait until the COVID goes away. It may hit tomorrow. We don't know, right? And we might have two disasters on top of each other. So we have to be prepared all the time.
Right.
But, so I want to go over a brief history of the task force, because I think a lot of people aren't aware. I have some background information here that the task force was really organized in Laguna Woods Village back in 1989 and consists almost entirely of volunteers who function under the Golden Rain Foundation and in cooperation with our security department. And their purpose is to keep our residents aware, informed, and prepared for major disasters. Prior to 2016, the task force published and maintained a series of articles on disaster preparedness, which were offered to the residents, free disaster-related training and emergency supplies that you still could get today. And I have quite a few samples that I could show you only if we have time today. But our new disaster preparedness office has now moved again to the old Globe office. If you came into the back door of the community center, it would be the first door to your left. So if you knew where the old Globe office was, that's now our new disaster preparedness office. You can pick up your supplies and any kind of forms that you need there. And their hours have been changed and adjusted now with the COVID. So, but you can go online to our website and get the most current hours when they're open. So between the years of 1989 and 2016, the task force was maintained almost entirely by a group of residents throughout those years. And then in 2016, when Chief Moore came, he noticed that this emergency operating plan, it was a great plan, but it was missing something. It didn't quite have the requirements for FEMA. And we were not synchronized with the city, and we weren't a city at the time. We were in 2016, however. And so we hired a group called Lopez and Associates, who specialize in EOPs for disasters. And so they brought us up to date, and now we have online a fully synchronized FEMA-approved EOP, Emergency Operating Plan. And we have partnered with the City of Laguna Woods, the Fire Department, FEMA, Orange County Health, El Toro Water District, Southern California Edison, to name a few. So because now that our EOP is so sophisticated, we are qualified for help from FEMA after a disaster. And that's
well, that was really helpful to put that all together.
Yes, so we're really appreciative to Chief Moore for coming in and calling that to our attention and getting us to this point.
Now, you also have a budget now. As you mentioned before, you kind of depended on selling supplies and volunteer help, but you actually have a bit of a budget now that is very helpful to the task force.
And yes, our budget is actually $17,000 a year, but that comes off the security budget. We just completed the GRF budget for 2021, and we did not add anything to the security budget for additional disaster preparedness supplies. And the problem is we've been a little complacent, like I said, and we have not changed out or updated our supplies. And if you go into our cupboards, every clubhouse has a disaster supply cabinet that's full of first aid supplies and operating equipment and batteries that are outdated. Some batteries have gone to acid. So we really have a huge expense coming, and we're going to have to pad this budget for 2022. So next May, if I'm not on the board, I'm going to have to follow through with this and make sure that the team is aware they need to add something to the security budget for the disaster preparedness supplies, because that's really important. Around $5,600 is what we keep in emergency items that we sell to the residents, but we sell them at cost. So we get that money back, but we also have to keep a level of supply. Mm-hmm. So $5,000 worth of revenue is always sitting on the shelves pretty much. And then you have your office supplies, which is only like $500, and the training supplies, another $500. But the next big item is printing and advertising and all the flyers and the training materials. Those run in to $2,000 and $3,000. Wow. Just for those. So we also pay vendors to do the CPR classes and the first aid classes. Wow. Our volunteers facilitate those, but the classes are actually taught by paid vendors. So we have that expense as well. So that makes up the $17,000, and we hope to get a little bit added to that next year.
As you mentioned, this is a volunteer support group. So are you recruiting for new volunteers, and how does that process work?
Well, normally we do our recruiting we hand out flyers at clubs and in the clubhouses, which are now closed. So we haven't been able to do the flyer route. And normally the office manager will go to clubs and he'll bring a bunch of supplies and sell supplies and recruit people that way. And we can't do that. So right now, the only recruiting we're really able to do is either on a segment like this, or throw a little plug in at one of the board meetings for, 1 or 2 minutes, or in the Breeze. I knew Breeze, that really nice magazine. Every so often we'll place an ad in there. So I'm working with our new director, Joan Milliman, now to add some more, advertising to recruit and train. We have a saying for years with the Disaster Task Force is, together we maintain a culture of preparedness. And that's been around for a long time. And every one of those words means something. Together means team. We work together as a team. To maintain means we're constantly working, constantly training, and culture is, of course, the community. So, and preparedness speaks for itself. And so together as a team, we're constantly training and working to maintain that awareness in the community and be prepared, because we don't want to be the ostrich with the head in the sand.
That's for sure.
So anyway, at the last meeting was on the 28th of July. In case I'm running out of time, the next meeting is the 29th of September. We always meet on odd months, the last Tuesday, not the fourth Tuesday, but the last Tuesday of odd months at 9:30. And they've been virtual meetings right now. Normally it would be in the boardroom, but right now they've been virtual meetings, and the chair is Chief Rojes. And we have several subcommittees that have been around since the beginning of time. So one of our most important subcommittees is radio communications. We obviously could not have an exercise or any disaster without radio communications. And those people are comprised of our club, radio club, that works out of Clubhouse 1. Then we have, of course, Tom Soul, our office manager that I mentioned, and he maintains all the inventory. And then we have training and education. For years, it's been Joan Brown and now Kathleen Matthews. And then we have the VMS Security Division. And then we have something that's been new for just 4.5 years is our Energy Subcommittee. Chief started that 4 years ago. So we could find alternate ways to keep the community center energized during a disaster. Because right now, all we have is 2 generators that run on diesel, and they're only good for 12 hours at a time. If the grid were to go down for more than 12 hours, we would like to find an alternate energy source for that building.
Right.
So they can operate.
Right.
So that's why we added that 4 years ago. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to get any money to do that as well. So we're hoping next year's budget will allow for that. And with new people coming in and the demographics of the boards changing, we might have more people interested in energy coming on the boards.
Right. And that's been a slow process. Steve Leonard kind of pushed that, and Bert Maldau at some point, quite a couple of years ago. And like you said, new technology is always difficult to adapt and at times very expensive. So like you said, as the demographics and the new board members come on board, I think new ideas and new policies may come in place, and this might be one of them. You know, before I let you go, I know that the disaster task force also is trying to fight this COVID-19 at this point, and you had a slide you wanted to share with everyone.
Yes, there is, well, those 2 things. You go on a site, it's called Earthquake County Alliance. They'll advertise this there as well. And that's one way the residents could volunteer and help during the COVID. And it also tells you how to prepare for the upcoming October 15th California shakeout. And it has a good video. If you're in a wheelchair, how do you duck and cover in a wheelchair? And just real quick, an example is you put on your wheels and you try to get to a corner, and then you could put a pillow over your head and duck that way, or put a TV tray over your head, or a little piece of cardboard or something you have handy. And then the other thing is, if you call LabCorp or go on labcorp.com to help with the COVID situation right now, they are taking plasma from people who have the antibodies, and they are making serum and using that to protect and help cure people who have COVID. And so if you call LabCorp, you can be tested. If you have the antibodies, then they will let you know within a matter of days if you're qualified. And that is a fantastic way to volunteer during this disaster right now. So that's labcorp.com to get information on how to volunteer that way. And ECA is the easiest way to remember it. And go there and find out how to protect yourself and exercise on October 15th, California shakeout.
Right, that's for sure. And that's something that's become more aware to the public as the years go on and the press goes and advertises these kind of events, but it's always the same day of every year. And we'll be sure to promote that here on Village Television and get it out on the message board as well. You actually had a webinar too you wanted to briefly mention that you have an interest in.
Yes, if you go to the CAA website, they have 3 more webinars coming up. And you go to that website and they'll tell you how to sign up. You have to sign up in advance. And the last 3 filled up really quickly. And so if you want more information on how to protect yourself or help your community, go to ECA website and sign up for those webinars. And they're free. You don't have to pay.
Right.
And I just want to say the California Shakeout is always on the 3rd Thursday of October. So if the 3rd Thursday is on the 15th, that's why the time that you duck and cover is 10 for October and 10:15 for the 15th of the month. So sometimes it's on the 14th, sometimes it's on the 17th. So it depends on what day it is. That will correspond to the minutes after the hour that you duck and cover.
Right.
Makes
Well,
sense?
we'll be sure to promote that here on Village Television, and I'm sure you'll mention it at the next Gold Rain Foundation meeting once again. Well, we know you've been a very, very busy person. We've seen you at plenty of virtual meetings and on Village Television, so we want to thank you for your time, and we wish you good luck the rest of the year.
Thank you very much, Paul.
We'll be back with more Village Television right after this.